Hi, welcome. I'm Danielle. This is Princess Waffles, who it appears will be joining us for this video. Princess is very loving and she really doesn't take no for an answer. I love her, so we'll see how this goes. This is also like day 2 of being more or less stuck at home because of our coronavirus pandemic, and that's kind of inspired the subject that I want to talk about today. Not my experience directly, but one of my friends had texted me a video of their tarot pulls for the morning, and I could hear the children in the background, you know, like screaming and being children. And I said, "Oh, that's so cute. I can hear the kids." And my friend was like, "Yeah, you know, it's really, my pulls weren't as clear as I would have liked them to have been because I'm distracted and I've got the kids here." And I was like, "Oh man, I know exactly what you mean. My children are often in the background when I am trying to read." I get up very early, so I do read for myself every morning before they're awake. But I turn to my cards often throughout the day, and so that inevitably means that the kids are going to be like in and out of my space and screaming and needing me and interrupting my readings regularly. It happens. I do find it very frustrating, but I did have kind of some good insight about it once, probably a couple years ago, and it was when my littlest one was still waking up at an ungodly hour, which they do when they're little, you know. And so I was in the middle of a reading and really, you know, like in it and feeling like I was really connecting. Princess Waffles is a biter. She's also polydactyl. Her huge thumbs are great for grabbing me. So I was really into this reading. My littlest daughter came running into the room, you know, just all excited in the morning. And like my instant reaction was fussiness. I was like, "Oh, well, the reading is ruined now," right? And I got a little huffy. And then I immediately was like, wait a minute, like, I might be distracted, that is true. But why would I feel like, and this was the core of my feeling, why would I feel like my guides or whomever it is, whatever energy it is that we're communicating with when we read tarot, why would I assume that that would abandon me because a kid came into the room? Because that's really kind of what I was thinking to myself. Well, that energy, that connection is lost now because here's my kid. I just don't think that's true. I don't think that that connection is severed because we're in a chaotic environment or our kids are calling on us or any of that. Maybe our mental capacity to interpret said messages is disrupted, but that certainly doesn't mean that we don't have access to that connection. So just wanted to make sure, hopefully everyone is aware of that, but I do like to state these things explicitly so that it's just clear, because if you're anything like me, you carry these lingering doubts about your ability to connect any of the time, and then especially when we have a lot of other things thrown at us. And even if you are in a really quiet environment, like now or anytime, the global like kind of experience of chaos can also feel like a distraction, you know, even if your personal environment happens to be relatively peaceful. So perhaps we're all like having a hard time feeling like we can really find that connection. So I did a little reading on that subject, which is what I do, you know. I have conversations with the tarot itself about these things. So here's the reading that I did. So first of all, I wanted to pull a card for, I wrote things down in case I forgot. Just a first initial opening card to describe like what reading in these environments is like when we've got our kids around, whatever. What does that look like? Oh, Princess, thank you. And I pulled Ace of Cups reversed. Ace of Cups is like a beautiful card, and it's access to your intuition and your higher self, and it's emotional self-care. And it's radical acceptance and love, and it's beautiful. And I think the reversal here to me just feels messy, but like no less full and delightful and perfect. It's just a little messy. So then I asked, how can we trust that we're still in communication with, something when it maybe doesn't really feel like we are? How can we have that trust? And I pulled the Fool. And if you want a card that represents trust, because this is it, right? This is leap of faith right here. And it's really asking us to trust in a really big way. And then I was like, well, okay, so we trust that we are in contact, right? But sometimes the messages that come through, they just really don't make a lot of sense. So what do you have to say about that? And I pulled Knight of Swords reversed, 10 of Wands reversed, and both of these just say drop it. Like, drop the need for it to make sense. Maybe that's not really the point. Then I said, okay, we drop it. We drop the need to figure it out. So what kind of messages then, are we receiving when they don't seem to make a lot of sense? And I pulled Temperance. So Temperance to me represents your guardian angel. And I know that that can be a little bit much for some people, and I get it. And I'm going to offer a more secular interpretation as well. But it does. To me, it represents directly your relationship intimately with divine. However you can interpret that, whether that's a guardian angel or, Christ or whatever. That feels like the direct connection. And this is supported through the beautiful chapter on temperance in the book Meditations on the Tarot, which is not widely read because it's incredibly dense. I don't understand about 85% of it, but the 15% that I can get is enough, because it is an amazing book, and it's based in Hermetic Christianity, and it's written by an anonymous author from, I think, sometime in the early 20th century. So it's not that old, but you don't have to be religious in any way to get something out of it. There's a lot of magical stuff in there. It's really good. I recommend it. Meditations on the Tarot. So anyway, that's kind of what really affirmed that temperance for me was that intimate connection with the divine. However, these kind of messages that we're receiving, right, when we can't really understand the message, we're not sure we're connected, seen through a more secular lens in temperance is their messages about balance and equilibrium and how to find connection with our stillness and our own heart when we are in the midst of this fluctuating energy. So these messages are teaching us how to achieve that. So I was like, great. So that really just sounds like it's the connection with you or with my highest and deepest self. The connection is the point, right? And I pulled the Lovers, which says yes, that is absolutely true. And so then I just ask, okay, so do you hear all these ducks? I don't know if those are really ducks. It's a strange sound. So then I asked, okay, so why is it that the ritual act of reading is more important than the messages themselves? And for that, I pulled Knight of Cups, which Knight of Cups to me in many ways is kind of temperance's minor counterpart or court card counterpart. It is about living in balance. It's also about learning how to move through the world guided by our intuition and by our hearts. So that's really lovely. And then I asked as a final question, so what's the most important thing that we need to do before we sit down to read in any environment, chaotic or not, to just make sure that we make the most of our reading? What's the most important thing for us to do? And I pulled 3 of Cups. And that's just really making sure that we invite all of ourself to the table and just acknowledge every part of us that is here. Oftentimes when I sit down to read, I'm always very agitated. I'm always agitated. I always have many things that I'm thinking of, It's sometimes they'll say those internet memes that a person's mind is an internet browser with 25 tabs open. That feels accurate. So I always have these running windows, right? And so basically when I sit down to read, I just say, okay, as I shuffle, like, I'm really distressed about this. I would like to acknowledge that I'm feeling really like envious of this thing or enraged about this thing. And I just kind of go through and I make these acknowledgments about how I'm feeling, just to say that that's true. And then I ask that they be set to the side, and I kind of mentally picture myself like shifting them over to the corner where they're like beyond my peripheral vision for just a minute, so that I can read with some measure of like focus. And sometimes that means saying things also like, I'm really annoyed that my kids are in the room, or I would like to acknowledge that I'm in a coffee shop and so I really don't think this is going to work, or I'm having a lot of doubt about this whole thing generally and I think it might be stupid. Just acknowledge all those things, all those truths, all those parts of yourself. I think that's all that I want to say. I think I'm going to go take a walk. Hopefully we're all getting some time outside in this kind of quarantine situation. And I hope that helped some. And I hope it really gives you permission to read and to trust your readings, no matter like what environment they come in, and honestly, no matter if you can understand what they're saying to you or not, because I think the answers are not really the point. It is the practice itself.